Um, we're on air. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Good part of day, as I always say. Welcome to the largest, fastest growing, and probably one of the most active large-scale Scrum meetups, less of New York City. Today we have our special guest from all the way from Israel, Elad Sofer. He is my colleague, Les trainer. Just a few words about Elad before we pass the baton over to him. He is a software engineer with several years of experience, quite a few years of experience developing in various embedded systems, C++, Java. He has a number of agile. He has a number of years in agile space. He is also one of very few certified LESS trainers globally, and as he claims, this agile virus or bacteria, whatever you wish to call it, once it bit him, he cannot, shake off this, this pandemic, right? He cannot shake off this disease. He is really into this, very um, passionate about this, and in fact, he's got a bunch of his own recordings, which I love watching, like 7-8 minute videos with Wolfie, Stevens from Finland, I believe. So those are great ones. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass the baton over to Elad. Elad, please
Yes.
manage your time and pace, and take questions as you wish. And off you go. The floor is yours.
So thank you, Gene. And I'm really excited to like all the way from Israel, right? It's like all the way from my room to the next room, and then here I am in the Let's Meetup NYC. That was fast. So I'm really happy, and I'm pretty much even touched the fact that you have decided to spend your Sunday morning or what other time it is for you. For me, it's now 6 p.m. But Sunday is a work day in Israel, so I'm not giving up any weekend time for you guys. So it's not really a fair exchange here. Just be aware of that. I'm gonna talk about metrics. I'm not gonna talk about myself too much because I don't think I'm that interesting. I'm gonna talk about metrics, and I chose, and Gene even told me when I said, "But you want to rephrase the title?" And I said, "Well, when Gene asked me, maybe I would consider rephrasing because it's provocative." I said, "Good, then I did a good job with the title," because I don't think. I think a provocative title is important to get attention, just like emails and newspapers. So the title that I choose is Abusing Metrics for Dummies. Now, I don't think that any one of you is a dummy. And the subtitle is How to Manipulate Data That Makes Us Look Good. Of course, this is not what we are going to talk about. I'm not going to teach you how to abuse metrics. I'm going to cover the topic of metrics from different aspects. And unfortunately, most of my experience is about abusing metrics. This is what I encounter much more than seeing organization being what we call really data driven. So let's talk a little bit about this. So really, Gene made a fantastic introduction of me. So I'm a software developer at heart, at soul. This is what I do. I still develop software. In the past, wow, more than 3 years, I've been a LESS trainer. I was the LESS organization from the very start. I'm a big believer in the approach and knowledge base that LESS brings, and not necessarily in dogmatically following any framework or anything like that. That's not my cup of tea in general. And I'm an agile coach, and I think the word agile has outgrown itself. So I now see myself as an organizational coach because I think I deal with much more things than just how to work in iterations. And of course, I'm simplifying stuff. So here's the question I'm going to ask for 2 people to answer it. So just shout out freely. I trust you to be polite and make sure that you're not speaking over each other. What do you measure really in your organization? And I'm looking for one or two examples of things that you measure, and what are you expecting to achieve by measuring that thing.
You can yell out and mute yourself back, guys. Let's see who's gonna.
Throughput.
Yeah, I can go.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So positively, we are measuring how much commits the team is keeping and how many stories are getting carried over. We have stopped replacing the commits with the reach stories or brought in stories so that we get the true metrics. But essentially, yeah, we are measuring just how much consistently the team is able to predict
Okay.
for a sprint.
So you're if I understand you correctly, let me just repeat it. So you used to measure code commits, or do you still measure that? And
No.
and you stopped. So go ahead and you can answer. I'm looking at the side because my screen is split. So
No problem. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
yeah.
Don't know what is meant by code commit. Is it the number of times people check in?
I don't know. This is what I heard you say. So maybe I misunderstood what you're saying.
Sure, I can go again.
Yeah.
Say assuming the team commits say 26 story.
Oh.
So we are measuring whether they are delivering on those 26 stories for that sprint. And we could have additional stories as reach stories, like stretch stories, as people call it.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, we are measuring the commit, whether the commits are met.
I see. So you're measuring basically what is traditionally called as planned versus actual. So in a sense, it's not exactly that, but it's kind of a transformation of that. And what are you expecting to achieve by measuring that?
So we are trying to check whether one is the team is able to meet the commits, and if not, understand why. For example, we could be dependent on other teams for their delivery, and then on top of that, we have to meet our commits, right? And then the other piece is if the stories are getting carried over, are they getting carried over because of defects? So we are trying to see whether we have enough guardrails to be able to consistently deliver for a release. So we're just trying to get to the root cause. So for example, if there are a lot of defects, are people doing enough unit testing, or whether they are conversing enough with the testing members, right? What's the scope of the story?
I see. So let me see if I understand you correctly, just real quick. So you're measuring again what I call planned versus actual, but it's more complex than that. How many stories carried over, and how many from the commit and the stretch, and all of this stuff. I may be rushing it a bit, and I apologize for that. And you're using that as kind of an indicator, whether if you did not meet the original commitment, then you use that as kind of a smell to go and do some analysis and try to understand what happened. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, we are assigning root cause to the carryovers and find out what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I'm not gonna talk specifically about this metric. I'm just trying to understand. Is there anyone else who wants to share?
I can go, Elad. There are a
Please
couple
do.
of, yeah, sure. My name is Pooja. A couple of metrics that we just starting to roll out in this organization that I'm supporting. Back to Jubin's thoughts, we're also measuring predictability of the teams in a number of ways, and that's one of the major area the organization is striving to. So when I say number of ways, it can be the way how Jubin explained, or maybe understanding the release ratio, release completion ratio, plan versus actual, just as you alluded. Also, there could be technical depths, like, what is the quality of defects, the number of priority items, how has it been reduced? urgent versus something else. So there are a number of ways that we are measuring our predictability. And because this is a third year of transformation, the organization is more kind of concern about meeting the commitment, meeting the delivery, right? So, so the kind of the focus is now moved how we can shift our business from thinking a milestone delivery focused mindset to at least if to arrange, like basically at least get them to that thinking, versus like in the old days we used to have that project milestones, right? Okay, this is the date that we will have a release, or this is what we want to do, right? So kind of moving that to that mindset where we can have some flexibility of range of dates, if not for that particular date, right? So
Cool.
yeah. Yeah.
So I'm hearing, and again, just replaying to see that I understand what you just said. So what I'm hearing you say is basically you're trying to get measurements of predictability.
Correct, exactly, you got it. Thanks, Elad.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for the examples and for sharing. That was very kind. This is Edward Deming. I don't know if you heard the name. He's very influential person. I mean, a lot of stuff that we talk about today is like trivial. He thought about 40 or 50 years ago. And he was his story is fascinating because he was like, he got zero credit in the States.
Elad, are you advancing your slides?
Yes, didn't you see it change?
I think people are still seeing your page 1.
Oh, wait, my screen sharing is paused for some reason. How do I resume? Okay.
Now we can, yes.
So you didn't even see this slide?
No, now we can.
Okay. And you didn't see this slide?
This one we did. No.
Oh, you did. Okay, never mind. So thank you, Gene. So this is Edward Deming. And now you can actually see his picture. And one thing, he said a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of quotations, smart quotations from him. One thing that I like a lot about he talked about measurements in a very deep way. He said measurements are not just numbers. They are supposed to be a whole thing. You need to think about holistically about those metrics. And one of the things that he said is just because you can measure everything doesn't mean that you should. And I think, for example, and again, no disrespect to anyone in here and whatever you guys measure, and thank you for the example, measuring predictability in software is a waste of time. I will say it loud and clear. There is a embedded, inherent uncertainty. Somebody is unmuting with some background noise. I'm not sure who it is. So
I'll take care of it.
Yeah, thank you. So inherent in software development and in product development is the fact that there's tons of uncertainty, tons of ambiguity. Nobody knows how to estimate a feature. Nobody in the world has solved this problem. It's an unsolved equation, if you want. You take a feature, there is no algorithm that you can put it in and take out an accurate estimate. It's just undoable. I'm sorry if I'm breaking bad news to you guys. So predictability as such is something that there is really, measuring it is dangerous. And why am I using the word dangerous? I'm not going to talk about predictability. I'm going to give you a story, because unfortunately I have far too many stories of metrics going sideways, of metrics being used with a specific reason and then getting the exact opposite. And I'm just going to share a story, a real story from my history working with an organization, is that people just don't understand the fact that metrics as incentives, which is often what happens, incentives doesn't have to be monetary. They could be something like you feel that you did a good job. Let's take the example, and again, I apologize, of planned versus actual. So let's say that as a company, we measure planned versus actual. Then if I'm a team member I'll make sure to meet the planned work. I'll just commit to 50% of what I can actually do. Done deal. So it's very, very dangerous to just take a metric, and we need to be aware of it. And let me take you into a story that I had, and it's a sad, real story, because every time I see an organization doing something wrong, I just feel bad about them. I'm sorry. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing on a daily basis. I'm on a mission. I'm trying to help the world. So here's a story about an organization that used to measure, not even like formally. The managers went every weekend. They went to their project management tool, and then they checked how many tasks each developer takes. And they see, okay, this guy did 10 tasks and she did 5, and this guy did 7 and whatever. And then the manager, and this is a real story, he found this guy that three sprints in a row, 3 iterations in a row, the guy had only finished 1 task. Now, if I take that as an indication or metric or indication of something, then what happened is that the manager went to this employee and shared the fact. He wasn't aggressive, and he was super kind, but he said, like, you know, I've seen the numbers, and it seems that you are underperforming compared to your other team members. So I really ask that you you do your part. And by the way, that developer, what happens as a result is that this developer indeed did his part. And he started doing 5, 6, 7, 8 tasks per sprint, like everybody else. Velocity dropped by 50%. See, the numbers don't tell you that this guy was the person who helped everyone all day. He ran around from this guy to the other, helped solve this, install that. He had a config. He was like, you know, this super smart guy, and he also super willing to assist and help and promote the team's activities. So here's a situation where metric is really, really dangerous. And like the story that I got before, that after they use the metric as a smell, and then they do root cause analysis, which is, of course, a better approach than to actually work based on that metrics. And this is the observer effect. It's a law in physics, basically, but it's wider than that. The act of observing something changes it. Whenever you set a metric to the organization and you're saying, we are looking at this, we are now measuring bug count. Okay, we'll make sure the bug count stays low, right? Because we are not dummies. As we said, we are super smart people. The IT industry is full with super smart people. That's the biggest problem. Now, those super smart people will make sure that they are able to do the work without other people interfering them or preventing them to succeed. So whenever some BS thing will be introduced for the organization, they will work around it because they are smart. And I've got really millions of examples, like really measuring bugs. I even had I've been a part of a project in which they promised that if by the X deadline we'll have less than X bugs, I don't remember the numbers, then the whole team, it was a bunch of teams, the whole group will get a weekend paid on the company's expense to a resort because it was so important, the deadline. And of course, no problem. It was really unspoken, but we met the deadline with the given needed number of bugs. It's a piece of cake. We just test less, right? So this is how double-edged swords work, and metrics are really things. So 3 ways that I see people using metrics that are, let's say, not effective. Manipulating behaviors, manipulating management, and making yourself feel good. Let's see an example. So here's some classic metric that people use, organizations use. They say, let's start measuring unit test coverage. We'll use instrumentations, and we can really know what's the coverage, and that will probably encourage the teams to start writing more unit tests. Sure, they will. But do we want to have more unit tests in the code? Not that I'm against unit tests, but most code can be covered in unit tests in seconds. It's super easy. I could write a script to do that. So here it is, it's all covered, but zero quality. So what's the point? So another example is velocity as a productivity metric. And a true story, I just fired a customer 2 months ago when he insisted, he wanted me to teach them how to use velocity as a productivity metric. I said, I don't know how to do that. And if you insist on me doing that, then I think we should stop our engagement, because I don't believe in using velocity. It's against my basic understanding of what a healthy organization looks like. So no problem. How do we increase velocity? We'll just double our estimates if we use points. So 5 became 10. That's it. Our velocity is now, it was 25, now it's 50. Or we can, of course, drop quality. So we'll have more stories delivered, but with a lesser quality, or we'll stop collaborating, or we'll stop helping other teams, or all kinds of weird behaviors. So really be careful what you wish for. Sprint score. This is, I've seen this one as well. Usually some program manager with experience from another company, he has this algorithm that they score a sprint based on this and that and this and that. And this is especially around making sure the planned versus actual, but it also includes other stuff. We want to be more predictable. As I said, it's not going to happen. Sorry. Really, predictability is not a thing. Sorry if you disagree, that's fine, but at least that's my understanding. Okay, political metrics. So transformation progress. We have decided to go under any kind of transformation. Let's say we are moving to, I don't know, we have a monolith and we're switching to microservice architecture. So we have a big transformation. So we can count the percentage done, which is, of course, again, I've seen that. I could be a 50% after 3 days. And then the other 50% could take 3 years. Sure. So I can show management, or I can manipulate priorities so that I advance properly, and then I get less pressure. Because you see, I'm moving forward. It's 10% per month. Basically, it's 9% per 29 days, or 1% per 29 days and 9% per day. So it's really manipulating metric for management often. Cost of bugs. So there's this new, I've seen, all of these are examples I've seen. The team really wants to replace or redesign or refactor a component. So they would start calculating what is the cost of bug fixing for that specific component, and they can justify the refactoring. Of course, nobody talks about what the value of it and what are the side effects. It's kind of, again, a political way to manipulate management. And time spent waiting for, this is a classic wait game, a blame game. Okay, I'm waiting for the architect to bring, and this is, I've measured for the last, like, who cares, right? So basically, in a blameful organization, that's a classic way to just let me be. And the last one is vanity metrics. We want to feel good about ourselves. So items that are in dev done status for organizations. And again, sorry, unfortunately, not uncommon, that after the development team is done, then there's another step. There's a quality step or some kind of undone group or department that has to take care of security, stability, performance, all the ELTs kind of stuff that some organizations just don't have the teams do. So we want to show that we are a good dev team, right? So look how many stories we are done, but yeah, all of them have not been tested yet. So what does it mean? Nothing. For marketing guys, page view, we had 10,000 page views on our website. What does it mean? What do we want to show? Employee churn rate. We want to show that we are a great place to work, so nobody has left that for the last 6 months. Yes, and for the last 1 year, we had an international crisis. Nobody is quitting his job. So you look good, but so are all the other companies in the world in that respect. So all of those manipulative metrics really are potentially risky, and they potentially create more damage than done. And this is Taiichi Ohno, let's say the founder, the father, the mental father behind the Toyota production system. And this is a statement about numbers. And he says, don't look with your eyes, look with your feet. The person who looks only at the numbers is the worst of all. So even if we do measure stuff, and don't get me wrong, I'm not against measuring stuff. I'm saying what is the purpose of measuring stuff? And as a team, or as a person that is being told, we want you to start measure X, or we would like you to start tracking, or, you know, just FYI, at management level, we are now collecting all of the data from blah, blah, blah. As a team, I really don't care. I mean, as long as it's not too much work for me, you can collect whatever you want. I mean, if it doesn't require me to invest a lot of time, I'll collect whatever number you want. But as soon as you ask me to collect something, I will, first I'd say yes, sure. But then I ask, you know, I'm really intrigued. Who decided that we need to measure that? And what are they going to do if the measurement goes up? And if the measurement goes down? What kind of response is going to happen? What kind of behavior or decision they are going to do? Because by asking that, that might invalidate the whole thing. This is what you're going to do. If it goes down, we'll do it now. Why are we wasting our time? So metrics are tools, and they assist us in getting visibility towards often achieving some goal. The thing is, when with the top-down metrics, sometimes starting really high in the organization, you just making sure that the organization is starting to manipulate them, because you have zero control, you have zero direct contact with the metrics, you have no understanding even of how those are generated. So really avoid those top-down, and if you want to have a business goal achieved, and you can talk with the team and say, this is what we want as an organization. Do you have an idea of what kind of indicators we could use to see whether we are getting closer to the goal? What would you do? And it also completely fine if not all teams would want to measure in the same way, as long as all teams are aligned in reaching that goal. And again, because I want to know is A, not a goal, B, not a valid reason. Maybe for 5 years old. But why do we measure this? And I've heard that. Because I want to know. I'm the CEO and I would like to know. Okay, that's, and I'm taking no prisoner. Just so disrespectful. And stop that. So a little bright side, okay, not all dark. So we do want to use data, and data is a great driver for decision making. And whenever we want to use that data to enable better and faster decision making, that's the key, in my opinion, right? And of course, Dilbert is always right. So take 30 seconds. Yes, meaningless numbers. So another statement from Deming, and I'm hearing myself double, so somebody mute himself, please, or herself. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So when we want to make a decision, then it would be a good idea to introduce data. So we'd use data not as the floating metric in the air that the organization collects all of the time, but we are very, very explicit about, we are measuring this so we can make that decision. And as simplistic, because this is not a metrics 101, because I don't consider myself a metrics expert, okay? I use data and metrics whenever I find that they will be assisting me in making decisions. And I'm not just, I'm all for transparency and visibility, but I'm not so much for visibility for the sake of visibility. There needs to be some other reason, some bigger thing. So a good metric, in my opinion, this is nothing formal. Okay, first is easy to accurately measure. So let me give you some examples of easy to accurately measure. Number of people on a team, on a specific team, right? Number of releases per X amount of time. Really easy to accurately measure. Actionable. Actionable meaning that I know in advance what I will do if the number goes up and down. And I can give you some examples of an organization I'm working with right now, and they are moving towards continuous delivery. I don't know if any of you are already in continuous delivery mode, but this is a 400 people organization, 400 people developers. R&D is 400 people, and they are moving gradually to continuous delivery. And what they did is they introduced a constraint. They said, we have 2 delivery windows currently. And then they said to the teams, we want you guys to be able to continuously deliver. So I want each of you to provide me, not with the actual numbers, but with an easy way that you guys can decide whether you are able to continuous deliver, to do continuous delivery because your quality is good enough, your test bed is good enough, your automation is good enough. I want you, each team, to create their own indicator, and you choose how to do it. And of course, with guidance and leadership and management and everything. And I'm not just do it in the dark. So it's aligned with a compelling goal, also compelling to the developers themselves, because developers really want to do continuous delivery. It's so much easier than to go through this delivery life cycle every time. A good metric is also hard to manipulate. Even we can manipulate anything, and I think Enron as a company just gave us all a bunch of years ago a lesson in manipulating metrics, but we know basically it's doable. Sometimes it's easy, so let's at least make sure that they are hard to manipulate and then owned by the right people. Now, I mentioned that before, people are trying to measure productivity for teams. This is the holy grail for them. How productive is my team? The bad news is, again, we don't know how to directly measure effectiveness of software development teams. We really don't know. If you find something that you think is a good idea, please send it to me. But if you really think it's a good idea, not because someone else said. The good news is that there is some statistical evidence, and of course, yes, lies, ugly lies, and statistics. So the good news is that there is a model that was extracted from a survey about trying to figure out what makes an effective organization. Okay, and fortunately, and at the same time, unfortunately, there is no one indication that we can use. There is no one metrics that we can use to try and check whether we are effective or not, compared to other organizations, of course. So by Jess Humble and Nicole Fodson and Gene Kim, they created this survey for several years in a row. It's sponsored by Google and backed up. It's super interesting. If you haven't read that book, read it, because I think it's very powerful. And they talk about 4 metrics that together, combined, they give a good sense of our effectiveness. And just quick walkthrough. Deployment frequency. So how often does your organization deploy code to production? And they have learned that the more frequent you are able to deploy code for production, that often means you are more effective. Okay. Now, lead time for changes. So how long does it take for code committed to code deployed? How much time does it take? Now, code committed doesn't mean that there's been something packaged, right? If I release every 2 months, then I could commit and then wait for 2 months. So this is the lead time for changes, what they mean. Time to restore service, which is from a moment an incident occurred until the system is fully operational again. And changes failure rate. And it's not exactly what we think, but it's what percentage of changes or to production cause problems. Okay, so for example, if it's not MTBF, because in meantime between failures, you would also measure stuff like third-party problems and other things. So this is a very specific metric because we want to be very focused on the effectiveness of the delivery, the product group. So if there's a problem with Kafka and we are using their queues, or there's like AWS had a huge problem some weeks ago, this is not something that we would calculate into this metric. So, is there any questions or noise? Okay. So what they found, and they did some comparison. The comparison is really, if you want the insight and really to understand it, just read the book. But the comparison is based on profitability, market share, customer satisfaction, number of customers, etc. This is like the effectiveness. So they split it into 4 levels: elite, high, medium, and low. So for elite organizations, and you can see the table, I'm just going to run through it. Deployment frequency is on demand, like AWS. Like AWS can deploy 300 times a day. One of the world's biggest and most complex products nowadays. And they are probably also the best in continuous deployment in the world. So if you're an elite organization, you do it on demand. Lead time for changes, less than a day. So from the moment I committed my code to production until to at least the main trunk or main branch, until it gets to production, is less than a day. And less than a day could be minutes. Time to restore service, less than 1 hour on average. Again, this is a very good indication of effectiveness. And then change failure rate, 0 to 15%. Now I'm not gonna walk through all of the table. I'm gonna go to the low, just so you get a sense. For the low organizations, less than 1 per month, which means 1 per 2 months, 3 months, or more. Yeah. Lead time for changes is more than a month. So from the moment I commit the code until the moment I get some sort of feedback, it's a month or more. Time to restore service between 1 week and 1 month. That is sad. I don't think companies with that level of service will actually survive, because that's just not going to cut it for anyone anymore. It could maybe 15 years ago. And change failure rate 40 to 60%. So I'd say just 50%. So every second change results in a problem. So if you take those 4 metrics, and it's not only that they compared like how good they are, but they even try to look at the ratio. So elite performers, they are able to deploy code 208 times more frequently than the low performers. They are able to take code from commit to deployed in times 106 than the underperformers. They are 2,604 times better in recovering from a problem. And they are 7 times lower in the failure change rate. So basically, if you see that, you say, yeah, that's a nice like description of a very healthy and successful R&D. If they are able to commit so often, and they are able to recover so fast, and the failure rate is so low, that classically, I mean, if I show this slide to people and say, does your organization able to do that? And if not, well, there you go. There's something to aspire for. So if I'm leading or working in an R&D organization and I get asked for metrics, then first of all, what I recommend you guys to do is ask who and why and what are you going to do, and then ask how is that related to this. So there's the accelerate model, which is, at least I tend to agree that it makes sense. Of course, all models are wrong, and as you know, but I tend to agree that it's useful and it makes sense. So I would say, okay, explain to me how by measuring this we'll get better at what, and then I show this and ask to what is it correlated, because we know for a fact that the combination of those 4 actually are a good indication of how effective are we as an organization. Another side note that I want to give you about metrics is that there's leading indicators or leading metrics and lagging metrics. Now, leading metrics are the things that we measure now. This is what we know. And the lagging matrix or the lagging indicator is what we are trying to affect. So here's an example. Deployment frequency. Let's say we as an organization, we decided we want to be able to deploy more frequently because then we can be more responsive and support our customers and whatnot. Is it leading or lagging? We don't know. So let's try and look at what are the leading indicators for that. So build and test complexity. How much time does it take me to run the tests and actually deploy? And lead time in general are definitely leading indicators for deployment frequency. However, deployment frequency is a leading indicator for customer satisfaction in this simplistic example, of course. But build and test complexity is also a lagging indicator for those leading indicators like dev skill level and level of automation. And lead time can be a lagging indicator for amount of interrupts or size of features or stories or backlog items or whatever you want to call them. And customer satisfaction, of course, is also a leading indicator for profitability. So at the end of the day, we would say, okay, ROI is the only metric. And it's probably true, but it's too hard to affect from within a development team, right? So this is why we use leading and lagging indicator to try and put the metric within the level that can influence it. And that's also something to be aware of. So make sure that the metric is actually influenceable, is not even a word, by whoever is required to own that measurement. And of course, you have a metric, you're not sure how it's gonna impact, test it. define an experiment. There needs to be a leading and a lagging indicator, right? There needs to be something that we measure now. It's something that we want to impact. Let's test it. Let's do some small thing. And you think maybe if I'll turn on this knob, then this volume will go up. But then you say, if you turn on this knob, this volume goes up slightly, because actually that's the volume for the, I don't know, base level, not the overall volume. So we need to test the connection and make sure that they are right. And the focus is actually not on achieving the expected results, it's about learning. Because sometimes the expected result is not what we want to wish for. Sometimes we can do much better. Sometimes it's unrealistic. So the focus is about learning and seeing whether we could help the team improve. Some metrics that are out of the box, I almost always suggest for teams and organizations to collect. So as a developer, I don't know if you know that one, cyclomatic complexity, it's kind of an indication of how complex the code is. Now the number itself is not that important because you're usually in a given state. By the way, technical debt can easily be measured with the assistance of cyclomatic complexity. And you don't care about the actual number now, but you want to see trend over time. Is my complexity going up or down? Is it remaining the same? And that could give an indicator whether our product is about to die or not. Because when cyclomatic complexity goes up, then the ability to change things goes down, and then good luck to us all. ENPS. NPS, I think most of you know it, Net Promoter Score. It's like something that you ask customers, how likely are you to recommend to a friend of yours to use our product, right? That's the classic Net Promoter Score question. And ENPS is Employee Net Promoter Score. Now, I know in organizations, this is really a great example. Organizations always do this festivals or on recruitments. Say, if you bring a friend, we'll reward you, we'll buy you something, we'll get you an Amazon gift card, or we'll get you cash, or whatever. Just we need more people. And then people say, yeah, it's great, it's a great place to work. Sure, we'll spread the word, and then they spread the word, or not. I don't know, but I'm asking this question all the time. If your organization is great and you like working there, of course you do want your friends to work there as well. Say, look, I work in this great place. You should really come to an interview and check it out. I don't need any reward for that. I'm going to get like 1 million thank yous from the friend that I invited, and he now works in a much better company. So by trying to stimulate or incentivize people for like bringing employees, that usually indication of the ENPS score is pretty low. But an ENPS score is really easy. Say, okay, would you recommend your friend to come work for us? Then, okay, now put your money where your mouth is. How many emails have you sent? So I just love this metric. I think it's super powerful. Feature usage count. So this for organizations that are deploying more and more features and actually not even testing whether they are used or not. So this is important data, especially in the world of iterative work. You throw out something and then you get a response, and you decide what is your next step. Psychological safety, which I really don't know exactly how to measure. But according to Google study, this is the top important attribute of a team to be productive. So if you want to go and read it about the Google survey or the Google study that they did for team. Yes, Marcelo.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind my interjecting there, if anybody really wants to look into this, there's an absolutely excellent book. It's called The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety by Dr. Timothy Clark. And they describe a very interesting model that goes from exclusion through challenger safety. In other words, a team member that is performing really well in a safe environment actually challenges that environment. And he describes a model around that. I'm not saying it's perfect. I do have my quibbles with it, but I figured since you brought it up, that might be something, folks here might want to, get
thanks.
connected with. I found it very useful, and it was enlightening to some of the executives that I had the conversation, and uncomfortable to several others, but that was to be expected. So thanks for letting me interject, Elad. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, Marcelo, for the comment. So level of confidence is really not a classic metric, but if you ask your developer, would you bet your salary on this feature working, or what percentage of your salary would you bet on this feature working seamlessly in production? That's a great question to test for level of confidence, because if I'm sure, I would bet 100% of my salary. So yeah, I'm going to double my salary this month, right? Number of teams needed to create value, because there's handoffs and there's a lot of problems as a result of that. So I would just go around the recent backlog items and measure how many teams were involved. And if I see a correlation between the number of teams and problems or stuff, that could be an indicator for work. And percentage of mistakes. Now, what is percentage of mistake is something that I learned from a manager at Spotify. He counts on every one-on-one how many mistakes his employee did. And if it was less than 20%, he requests that the employee innovates more. So it's exactly not what you think. It was really an insightful moment for me. I said, tell me one thing that you do differently here. I said, well, in my first welcome interview to an employee, I tell him explicitly, I'm expecting you at least 20% of your time to make mistakes and be wrong. Because if you don't, that means that you don't innovate, you don't try new things, you don't step out of the box, just doing the same thing. And that is not the kind of work we're looking here. And that is amazing as a metric. So most metrics are wrong, some are useful, just like models. People will often misinterpret the metrics. There's nothing really you can do about it. So try to just be very honest, very deliberate. Let the people own their own metrics and don't drop parachute metrics from the head of the organization. Use metrics in pairs, leading and lagging, to get validation. Avoid measuring individuals, please, I beg you. I don't know if you do that, but I beg you, by all means, don't do that. This is really, really disrespectful and often just lead to misunderstanding and create just, by the way, the aftermath, the person in the story where the team velocity dropped 50% with story, 1 sprint after that, he was gone. He went to another company and they lost one of their really star players. Just for that, just for looking at the metrics. That's how dangerous they are. And owned by the team. So I don't mind staying a couple of minutes more. I know it, I had a time slot till 7, but.
First of all, Elad, thank you very much for doing this. This has been great. If you have a few extra minutes, if people want to ask you questions, perhaps we can do this a bit of a. Yep.
If anyone has a question, feel free.
Yeah, folks, the floor is open. Just speak eloquently, succinctly, and put yourself back on mute.
Yep. My first question, if I may, Elad, thank you so much. This was very insightful. Kind of challenging me in different ways, and also challenging me to go back and influence the set of metrics that we have. My question was more so with the maturity assessments, and there seems to be a little bit of I wouldn't call it as craze, but every transformation that most of the organization goes, they are so much holding the MA assessments so dearly, that I fear that we look beyond, as you just mentioned, the metrics that are laying as part of those assessment, how important they are or how defining they are. In some organization, if they are not able to afford to buy certain assessments which are there on the market, like which I wouldn't call it out, but just maybe Sally Letta's maturity assessment, very famous, being adapted by SAFE. Um, I mean, how effective they are.
Again, my personal opinion and experience, right? I'm not saying that something that is universally true. So just heads up warning. Um, I I think that most maturity assessments are useless. I would go as far as saying that they created some economics around those assessments. I once worked with a customer, never mind the name or the domain. They had an assessment in the automotive domain. So in the automotive, there are some like maturity and standards and stuff like that. And the person who assessed them was also the person who actually coached them to pass the assessment.
Exactly.
So that really is just it's foul play written all over it, right? Now I'm not saying that there's actually any I don't know, any bad intention behind it, but the fact is that I think that the best maturity assessment a company has is its customers. And I don't need to be, again, this is my personal take. And so if someone would say how to combine agile with, I'm going to call it out, CMMI. So I'm going to say, okay, CMMI level 5 basically says that if you're good enough, you can decide about anything. So, okay, we're CMMI level 5. Now, whether we want to document that or not, and again, I'm not an expert, and I'm not very experienced with maturity tests and maturity assessments. After 20-something years of developing products and working with organizations, I never found any value in those. I don't think I've seen lousy organizations with CMMI level 3 or 4, and I've seen really great organizations with no CMMI level. So
yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Elad. That
Yeah.
gives me a good perspective. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Other questions?
So you mentioned that the person driving the metric shouldn't be the person measuring the metric. But you also talked about the team owning the metrics. So that seems to be a contradiction because they would be measuring and driving it.
Okay, thank you for asking this, because that gives me an opportunity to clarify. So thank you, David. I think in many situations I have encountered, and that is of course not always the fact, is that the metric is decided externally from the team. And then I would say, instead of deciding for the team what the metric is, tell them to decide what the metrics they want to use in order to achieve a certain goal, or have a discussion, conversation, or some kind of something. So this is what I meant. Now, of course, a team, and this is what I said, I want the team to own the metrics that they themselves either created or agreed that is important. Does that clarify? Maybe my English is not like clear enough. Cool. Thank you, David. Other questions?
I have one, if I may. This is like hard for me to put into words, I guess, but you mentioned that a good metric has leading and lagging indicators, and that it has basically a goal of what we want to measure with it, if I remember correctly. So like devil's advocate, let's say that I want to see how much value I bring my customer, and for that I am measuring actual versus committed. So like how many story points did I actually deliver and how much did I commit? I personally, I'm seeing this not work right now, and I don't really like it. And how would you deal with this?
So I would first ask, I think, why do you think there is a correlation between planned versus actual and value?
Yeah, trying to think into it, it's like, of course, when they deliver something that's in the backlog, they deliver something to the user, right? So that makes the user happy, and that's value. That makes it makes no sense. Like, forget it. I know exactly what you mean. I'm trying to like get information to like argue against my colleagues, but I get it. Thank you.
So I think that, again, I think I'm it's not about argument. It's just explain me not you, yeah. But I'm asking. So you want to. You don't think we're bringing enough value to the customer, so you don't think we're maximizing our potential or whatever. Okay, let's talk about that, and let's start a conversation that has nothing to do with planned versus actual.
Yeah.
Because planned versus actual, and I would say that would only motivate the team to be more defensive. Now, Kent Beck, in this is my first encounter with agile, was in 90 something when I read Kent Beck, one of the early extreme programming book. And he says there, and I will never forget this line. He said, as a development team, we are playing to win. We are not playing not to lose. So we want the development teams to be aggressive. We want them to do planning mistakes, because that means that they are trying. If they meet their commitment all of the time, it means that they are taking no risks and are not trying to push their own limits. So I really, really appreciate when I see a team overcommitting or over forecasting what they could do, because they're trying to do more. So if they didn't meet their forecast, that's not a bad indication at all. It might be, but it might be not. So
yeah, that focus on like being able to make mistakes and not being punished for them, the psychological safety, if you will, really ties into it. Thank you so much. Yeah.
yes, yeah, thank you. Other questions?
I have a question. Full disclosure, I'm not in it's a agile project, but when you were talking with David about having the metrics decided by the team, do you feel that also applies to, say, for instance, when you get to training of a system, that the users could define the metric that they're going to be, that the success of the implementation is going to be judged by, in part, they're trained to the point where they're going to be able to have great ability in making this a successful implementation.
So let me see if I understood your question. So you're saying you want to measure the success of the implementation. That's what you're trying to measure, and the thing that you do in order to increase the success is to train the users.
Right, train the users what metrics to use to guide them. We're going for 1% incident, so that they know what they're doing, right, in using the new system is going to be part of the measure of the success is going to be, if they're making a lot of mistakes and there's a lot of tickets and incidents. So do you feel it applies that, you could ask them to help the project define what metric their training success should be judged by?
Definitely. I would actually, I don't know exactly how I would phrase the question. Of course, especially with users, we need to think of what we want to achieve. But I would probably go and observe the users and see how they are using the system and the knowledge that I've given them. And then maybe I could find indications there. Like, how much time does it take? And again, I'm imagining something. There's a lot of missing information. But let's assume I'm teaching somebody, to edit videos. This is my product, and then I train my users so that they know how to edit videos. I could actually observe them and see how much time does it take for them to do a specific operation that I expect like an experienced user to do in X amount of time. So it's about, I think in that sense, it's about really observing them and of course discussing with them that you really want to make the system better. So what would be an indication that you're happy, that you enjoy or you like? I have one of my customers is really one of the most successful startups in Israel right now. They have tons of money. One of their like goals as a company, they say out like, we are not looking for satisfied customers. We want raving fans. And they are aiming for that. They want customers who are so psyched by using their system, and it's a sales system. Okay, we're not talking about some cool 3D stuff or a computer game. It's a system for salespeople, and they are looking for people who get so much value from that system that they will tolerate anything. So they don't care about bugs. So they say we have such an amazing system that people will tolerate problems. Of course, they have a super high quality. Yeah, don't get me wrong. But so I really don't know, but I think I would go and start talking to them and having that conversation actually with them. Say, look, this is what we want to achieve. Do you have any thoughts? This is how I would approach that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions?
Yeah, I had a question about planned and done metrics. We're using that with our velocity, and the idea would be doing a planning session that you're going to plan to take on your PBIs, and you try not to change them at the end of the actual sprint. Then you measure what you did, and for us, I don't. It's not working. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm thinking we should probably measure at the end of the sprint what we really did, and take it from there versus trying to plan it out. And if you change anything, you're going to be in trouble. And so, and that's all. This is attached to your pay as well. So it's pretty. What do you think about something like that?
So I really don't know. What are you trying to achieve? So let's start. What is
better planning? In other words, better
planning.
planning for your PBIs. Break them down effectively, what you can really do. But that also kind of gets into goal planning, right? So they break them down to so far that they can't really accomplish too much. They're too much task oriented. So your user stories are pretty much quantity, not quality. So the planned and done metrics kind of, I don't know, it kind of takes away the, actually reinforces gaming. You're just gaming the system.
Yeah, it backfired on you, like many organizations that often measure planned versus actual in any form. You can measure it really in any form, and I think it's a good opportunity to just stop focusing on the metric and start asking, what as an organization do we want to achieve, and then engaging with the teams and say, look, this is what we want to achieve. How can we get an indication that we are achieving that? So we want better planning, but let me, again, we could go on for hours, but why is planning important?
But you see what you're going to do. You say, I'm going to get this thing done. I'm going to do it. And you didn't plan correctly. So you're going to get the point. Of course, we used Fibonacci 1, 3, 5, 8, whatever, but and you're planning on those points and you point it out. But at the end of the sprint, you didn't complete it. Why didn't you complete it? Well, you didn't plan good enough. That's the excuse.
Okay, so we didn't plan good enough. What does that mean? So do we want to be experts in planning or in product development? What is the goal?
I guess break them down, planning your user stories correctly, and really try to be better predictors. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to us at all. The Scrum Masters are going, why is management dictating how we want to measure our work? And we're changing it right now. We're actually right now. You so much. We're going to definitely use your mindset, and the people here, participants, really helped me. So
that makes me happy.
Yeah,
thank you.
Good stuff.
I really recommend that you or suggest that you talk with management. So look, let's talk about other aspects of this measurement thing.
Exactly.
Hey, folks, Elad, first of all, thank you again for staying late. Let's take one more question because let's be conscious of Elad's time as well. It's kind of getting late on his end. And by the way, before we all peel off, there was an ongoing question, and so ping, ping, ping. So Elad, I'll handle with you one-on-one, mano. But people are asking you to come back maybe to talk on OKRs.
OKRs, not going to happen. Huh.
Okay.
I don't know enough. It's not that I have any criticism.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
But yeah.
So we'll thank you for sharing your needs, folks. We'll look for someone in our on our side to bring someone with quality knowledge.
Well, if you do a lean coffee, I'm seeing the chat now because I'm not presenting.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to join.
Yeah. Well, maybe it'll be like a lean coffee panel kind of thing. And I'm going to shamelessly point people to this one. Something I wrote on OKRs, but that's not to anchor anyone else's views. Anyway, one more question for you before you go home.
Yeah, I'm home. Yeah,
you're home. Anyone
before
else?
I leave the room.
Before I leave your room, yeah. If no questions, just we'll cut it short. We'll take one more question, folks.
What was the name of the book again that you put out?
Accelerate.
Accountability something. The accountability book that you referenced.
There was someone, Elad or someone else. Tom Meller pinged something as well, and someone else did.
In the slides. It was in the slides.
In the slide, it was accelerate.
Accelerate. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
All right. Sounds like this party is coming to an end, right? So, well, first of all, thanks a lot to you, Elad, personally, for coming out and doing this for us. It's been really exciting, I think, very useful. And I personally appreciate it. Thank you for making this virtual trip at this late hour for you. Everyone else, thank you for joining. We'll keep these going, and hopefully people will be, bringing friends and families and colleagues. And as I said, we're trying just to expand more, bring more knowledge to people, widely, globally. So
on a personal note, thank you. It was fun. Thank you for the questions and for the challenges. I love it. And I think Jean I'm gonna share my slides with you. So, yep. And if you have any questions, just drop me an email. I'll answer somewhere. Yeah,
and I'll include your content. I'll include. I'm pinging again this link. The video and the slides are going to go on this page, and as well as Elad's info will be there as well.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend. The rest of it.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.
Everybody.